A respected attorney, handcuffed on courthouse steps, but a powerful judge was watching, and what she did next changed everything. Can justice prevail when it starts with handcuffs? The crisp morning air usually hummed with the quiet anticipation of justice, but today, Officer Jake Riley's command sliced through it like a cold blade. "Hey you, step away from the courthouse immediately." Ethan Hayes, a beacon of professionalism in his sharp navy suit, his leather briefcase clutched in hand, paused. Around him, the everyday ballet of lawyers and citizens flowed freely into the grand entrance. Yet, Ethan, a man with 15 years of navigating these very halls, was singled out. "Excuse me, officer," he began, a familiar, unwelcome heat rising within him. But his legal mind urged calm. "I'm an attorney. I'm due in Judge Evelyn Reed's courtroom in 10 minutes. Riley's hand drifted to his radio, a gesture that spoke volumes. "Sir, this building is restricted. Only authorized personnel are allowed inside." Ethan couldn't help but note the bitter irony. He defended the innocent, championed civil rights, and fought for justice within these very walls countless times. Now, he stood accused, treated like a common criminal at the threshold of his professional sanctuary. "Officer, I am authorized personnel," Ethan asserted, slowly reaching for his briefcase, his movements deliberate, visible. "My bar card and ID are right here. Keep your hands where I can see them," Riley barked, his voice drawing curious stares. "Step away from the building now." Unbeknownst to them, from her third-floor office, Judge Evelyn Reed watched, a knot forming in her stomach. She recognized Ethan instantly. He was scheduled to appear before her in mere minutes for the explosive Morrison civil rights case, a case that could cost the city millions for police misconduct. Ethan, ever the strategist, silently cataloged details. Officer Jake Riley, badge 2847, mid-30s, hand hovering near his weapon, a stance that screamed threat, not citizen. "Excuse me, officer," Ethan repeated, his voice a calm counterpoint to the rising tension. 15 years had taught him the harsh truth. A black man had no room for error in a police encounter. Every word, every movement could be twisted against him. "I'm an attorney," he continued, showing his empty hands. "I have a hearing in Judge Reed's courtroom in 10 minutes. The Morrison civil rights case." The name hit Riley like a punch. Morrison, the lawsuit that had dominated department meetings, the one threatening to force systemic change and cost the city a fortune. And Ethan Hayes? Riley's memory flashed back to the briefings, the warnings about this attorney, the one who'd already cost the department a staggering $800,000 in past settlements, who turned minor stops into federal investigations, who specialized in exposing officers like Riley as prejudiced. Riley's hand instinctively went to his radio again. "Sir, this building is restricted. Only authorized personnel are allowed inside." But even to his own ears, the words sounded hollow. Dozens of people streamed past them, exercising their fundamental right to access the court. Why was this man different? Every instinct Riley's training had ingrained. "Trust your gut. Act on suspicion. Maintain control," screamed danger. Ethan felt the familiar surgical sting of racial profiling. He'd known it in luxury hotels, at upscale restaurants, in bank lobbies, but here, at his courthouse, where his reputation should have heralded his arrival, where justice was meant to be blind. "Officer, I am authorized personnel," Ethan reiterated, his hand moving slowly, visibly, towards his briefcase. Every civil rights lawyer learned this careful choreography. Announce, move slowly, hands visible, maintain dignity. "My bar card and identification are right here. I'm licensed and have been practicing before this court for 15 years. But Riley's training overrode everything. Sudden movements meant threat. Reaching for objects meant weapons. Arguing meant resistance. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he bellowed, his voice designed to dominate and attract attention. Across the street, Sophia Perez, a paralegal at Ethan's firm, paused her jog. She instantly recognized her boss. What was happening? Ethan, always so composed, never agitated, never loud, yet here he was, hands raised, facing an officer convinced he'd snared a criminal. Sophia pulled out her phone, her paralegal instincts screaming for documentation. She knew the pattern of profiling, the dangerous escalation. Judge Reed, from her window, watched with growing alarm. Ethan Hayes, minutes from a crucial hearing, She'd seen him argue constitutional law with breathtaking precision, cross-examine with surgical skill, and endure pressure that would break lesser lawyers. His reputation was stellar: Harvard Law, civil rights accolades, pro bono work. In the Morrison case, she knew it intimately. Police statistics themselves painted a clear picture of racial profiling. Now, with a chilling irony, one of their own was providing live evidence of that very bias. "Step away from the building now," Riley commanded. Ethan complied slowly, his briefcase still visible. His Harvard education taught him law. His father's wisdom taught him how to survive as a black man in America, how to maintain dignity, assert rights, and protect his life in the face of baseless suspicion. "Officer Jake Riley," Ethan stated, reading the nameplate, committing the badge number to memory. "I am attorney Ethan Hayes with Hayes & Associates. I represent clients in civil rights violations, and I am currently late for a hearing regarding police misconduct." The words hung heavy, a prophecy. Riley felt the implications, the shadow of the very lawsuit he'd heard about. But pride and ingrained training wouldn't let him retreat. He'd made his stand. To admit error now, weakness. "I don't care what you claim to be," Riley retorted, though a tremor of uncertainty betrayed him. "You're loitering on government property." Ethan offered a patient smile, one honed from countless hostile witnesses and skeptical judges. "Officer, loitering implies idle purpose. I have a very specific, legal purpose, representing my client in a scheduled court hearing. This is the antithesis of loitering." The legal precision startled Riley. Most criminals didn't quote statutes. Most trespassers didn't possess such calm, analytical responses. But he was too far in. Backing down now meant admitting he'd profiled an innocent man, that his instincts were prejudice, his authority illegitimate. His pride, once his strength, now trapped him. Judge Reed snatched her phone, dialing courthouse security, her voice urgent. "This is Judge Reed. There's an officer harassing Attorney Hayes outside the building. Send security immediately and alert the chief judge." Her voice, sharp with 15 years of judicial authority and moral outrage, resonated. This wasn't just harassment, it was an assault on justice itself. The confrontation drew a crowd of legal professionals. Ethan Hayes, the civil rights attorney, being harassed? The whispers spread like wildfire. Olivia Kim, from the DA's office, recognized both Ethan's devastating cross-examination skills and the police conduct that made her job harder. Police credibility was paramount for prosecutors. Such misconduct eroded the entire system. Olivia also pulled out her phone. Documentation was vital. An attorney, an officer of the court, facing arrest? It created legal and jurisdictional nightmare. And Ethan, a specialist in police misconduct, knew exactly how to weaponize such violations. "Everyone step back," Riley boomed, pulling out handcuffs with theatrical flair. "This individual is under arrest for trespassing on government property." A collective gasp rippled through the lawyer. Trespassing? For a lawyer with a hearing inside? Handcuffing an officer of the court for anything less than an emergency was unthinkable. Trespassing? Ethan's eyebrows arched, the same look he gave witnesses, whose lies crumbled under his gaze. "Officer, I have a legal right to enter. I'm a licensed attorney. Arresting me would be false imprisonment under Penal Code Section 20. Riley's internal alarms blared. Criminals didn't cite statutes, but he was committed. Every moment of hesitation would be recorded. He'd been taught that uncertainty undermined authority, that changing course showed weakness. False imprisonment requires detention without legal justification. Ethan continued, his voice steady, patient, as if lecturing a jury. "You have no reasonable suspicion, no probable cause, no authority to exclude me from public property. I have a legal right to access." Through her office window, Judge Reed watched, her anger intensifying. She'd seen Ethan dissect officers whose testimony didn't hold up, whose explanations were riddled with inconsistency. Now, she was witnessing the very conduct that made his cases so compelling. An officer making assumptions based on race, escalating a routine interaction into a constitutional violation. "Officer Riley," Ethan said as the handcuffs neared his wrists, "I'm invoking my right to counsel. And let it be known, this is being recorded by courthouse security and witnessed by multiple officers of the court." He gestured to the growing crowd. Sophia Perez continued recording, meticulous with timestamps, angles, quotes. She knew how officers could later claim fear, suspicion. Detective David Miller of Internal Affairs, entering the courthouse, saw the commotion. 22 years in law enforcement, 8 in IA, told him this was trouble: complaints, investigations, lawsuits. He knew the pattern. Officers with questionable behavior often had a history. Handcuffing a professional outside a courthouse screamed, "Poor judgment." Riley looked around, suddenly realizing the entire legal community was his audience. Phones, recording from every angle, captured his aggression against Ethan's calm. But his pride, his fatal flaw, wouldn't let him back down. He'd gone too far. "You're under arrest for trespassing and resisting arrest," Riley declared, clicking the cuffs around Ethan's wrists with deliberate force. "Resisting arrest?" Ethan's voice, though strained by the biting metal, held the same incredulity he'd used in court against false accusations. "Officer, I've complied with every lawful order. I've been peaceful, respectful, identified myself, and explained my legal right to be here. Your arrest lacks probable cause and violates my Fourth Amendment rights." The legal precision, the intimate knowledge of constitutional protections, created a jarring dissonance in Riley's mind. This wasn't how criminals acted. This was a man who understood the law better than he did, who knew exactly how to dismantle misconduct. Just then, the grand courthouse doors burst open. Chief Judge Harrison emerged, flanked by security, his face a thundercloud of righteous fury. Behind him, Judge Reed, still in her black robes, her presence radiating authority, strode towards the constitutional violation, unfolding on her very steps. "Officer Riley," Chief Judge Harrison's voice, heavy with 3 decades of judicial experience, boomed across the plaza. "Release Attorney Hayes immediately." The word struck Riley like a physical blow. Chief Judge Harrison, the administrative head, whose word influenced police policy and budget. Riley turned, handcuffs still clamped on Ethan, a cold certainty settling in. His career had just veered towards termination. "Your Honor, I was responding to suspicious activity." This individual was loitering. This individual, Judge Reed cut him off, her voice sharp, precise, "is Attorney Ethan Hayes. He has a scheduled hearing in my courtroom in 4 minutes. He's practiced law here for 15 years. Your actions are unconscionable." The word unconscionable was more than criticism. It was a formal legal condemnation, a shock to the conscience. It would follow him. The crowd pressed closer, witnessing a historic clash. Word of the respected civil rights attorney's arrest spread like institutional wildfire. Clara Mendez, a court clerk for 28 years, pushed through the crowd. She'd seen Ethan argue, processed his filings, seen him treat staff with respect, many lawyers reserved only for judges. "Officer," Clara called out, her voice carrying the moral weight of decades. "Attorney Hayes has been coming through these doors for 15 years. He's never caused trouble, never been disrespectful, never given anyone reason to question his right to be here." Her testimony held unique power. Court staff saw attorney's true character. Detective Miller stepped forward, his internal affairs badge gleaming. "Officer Riley, I'm going to need to see your incident report for this arrest." The mention of IA sent a chill down Riley's spine. Investigations, interviews, scrutiny of his entire career, even past complaint. His stomach dropped. "Detective, I was following proper protocol for suspicious individuals," Riley stammered, his confidence evaporated. "Suspicious?" Chief Judge Harrison's voice thundered. "Officer, Attorney Hayes is a member of the bar in good standing. He represents clients before this court regularly. Your protocol appears to be racial profiling." The accusation was devastating. It implied systemic bias, not just poor judgment. His credibility, his entire career, would be tainted. Ethan stood quietly, letting the system he'd served now defend him. The handcuffs, still biting into his wrists, were now a potent symbol of the injustice he fought. Perfect evidence for the civil rights case that was surely coming. The irony was complete. An officer, fearing a racial profiling lawsuit, had just provided irrefutable proof of it. Furthermore, Judge Reed added, pulling out her phone with deliberate care, "I've recorded this entire encounter from my office window. Every word, every action, every violation of Attorney Hayes's constitutional rights. Video evidence from a sitting judge, unimpeachable." Riley's face paled. His actions were now undeniable, an official record for investigators. Prosecutors. The FBI. Olivia Kim approached. Officer Riley, I'm a prosecutor, and I've observed this entire encounter. Attorney Hayes committed no crime, yet you've arrested him without probable cause. This could constitute false imprisonment, civil rights violations, and official misconduct. The charges outlined a progression of severity that could obliterate Riley's career and life. Jail time, federal prison, permanent ban from law enforcement. The devastating clarity of his situation hit him. He'd arrested a prominent attorney, violated constitutional rights before witnesses, provided evidence for the very lawsuit he was meant to prevent, and exposed the city to millions in liability. Chief Judge Harrison, Ethan said, his voice imbued with the calm dignity that had made him legendary. I'd like to file a formal complaint regarding this officer's conduct. I'd also like to request that this incident be reported to the State Bar, Civil Rights Committee, and the FBI's Civil Rights Division. The FBI. A shockwave went through the crowd. Federal investigation meant scrutiny beyond local departments, patterns of systemic violations, federal oversight, prison sentences. Riley's knees nearly buckled. Federal prosecutors, grand juries, no parole. Detective Miller activated his radio, his reluctance palpable. Internal affairs to all units. Officer Jake Riley, badge 20847, is hereby suspended pending investigation of civil rights violations. Report to headquarters immediately for questioning. Suspension. Arrest powers revoked. Badge and weapon confiscated. Career under review. Officer Riley, Chief Judge Harrison commanded, his voice deadly quiet. Remove those handcuffs immediately. Then report to your supervisor for disciplinary proceeding. Riley fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking, as he unlocked the restraints, now symbols of his downfall, evidence of constitutional violations. Ethan rubbed his wrists, the red marks already visible, ready for photograph. The physical marks would fade, but their documentation would be lasting proof of the unconstitutional force. Attorney Hayes, Judge Reed said, her voice tinged with emotion, on behalf of this court, I apologize for this unconscionable treatment. This courthouse should be a sanctuary of justice, not a place where officers of the court face discrimination. Her apology from a judge carried immense weight. It acknowledged systemic failure. Ethan straightened his tie, picked up his briefcase, and offered a graceful smile. His dignified response, a testament to the character juries found so compelling. Your Honor, this experience simply reminds me why my work is necessary, Ethan replied, with the moral clarity that had defined his career. Officer Riley has just provided compelling evidence for the Morrison case I'm about to argue. The Morrison case. Riley's blood ran cold. He, the officer concerned about a racial profiling lawsuit, had just provided textbook evidence of racial profiling, the very discrimination they were suing to stop, demonstrated in real time. Sophia Perez approached. Mr. Hayes, I recorded everything from multiple angles. The video clearly shows Officer Riley's actions and your responses. Her professional documentation, combined with Ethan's own experience, created an unchallengeable narrative. The crowd watched Riley's career unravel in less than 30 minutes. From confident authority to suspended officer facing federal investigation. A stark reminder, authority carried responsibility. Violations had consequence. Officer Riley, Ethan said, his voice tinged with the compassion that made him so effective with juries. I hope you understand, this isn't personal. This is about accountability. This is about ensuring every citizen, regardless of race, can enter a courthouse without fear. Ethan, humiliated and arrested, still sought systemic reform over personal revenge. Riley paused, looking back at the man he'd wronged, realizing Ethan, who could have destroyed him, offered a lesson in dignity. The lawyer who could demand maximum penalties was suggesting redemption. Attorney Hayes, Riley said quietly, his voice barely audible. I made a mistake. Officer, we all make mistakes, Ethan replied, his patience legendary. The question is whether we learn from them or repeat them. Your choice will determine whether this incident defines your career or transforms it. Ethan understood that true change required transforming hearts, not just destroying careers. Judge Reed checked her watch. Attorney Hayes, we need to begin the Morrison hearing.
Are you prepared to proceed, despite this ordeal? Ethan smiled with renewed purpose, lifting his briefcase. It now contained, not just months of preparation, but fresh, undeniable evidence. Your Honor, I've never been more prepared. This incident has provided valuable insight into the systematic problems we're here to address. He had experienced firsthand the discrimination his clients faced, the humiliation of racial judgment, the constitutional violations he dedicated his life to prevent. As they walked towards the entrance, Chief Judge Harrison made a decision that would echo for years. Attorney Hayes, I'm scheduling a special session to address police conduct on courthouse property. Your experience today will be Exhibit A in establishing new protocols. Ethan's humiliation would serve a purpose far beyond personal vindication. The crowd dispersed, but the impact remained. Photos and videos spread across social media. Justice for Hayes trended. Professor Lena Evans, witnessing the event, declared, "This incident will be studied in law schools for decades. It demonstrates how racial bias corrupts interactions and how institutional authority can protect rights." Inside, Ethan prepared for the Morrison hearing, his own experience of profiling by the very department they were suing, now strengthening his case beyond imagination. His briefcase, once viewed with suspicion, now held documents infused with the power of personal testimony. Statistics would be supported by real-time evidence, legal arguments by his violated rights. Judge Reed called court to order. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin the Morrison civil rights case, I want to address an incident that occurred just moments ago on these courthouse steps. Her official acknowledgement cemented it into the court record. She detailed Riley's actions, the arrest, the assumption of criminality based on race, the constitutional violations. The courtroom listened in stunned silence. The defense attorney, Arthur Jenkins, felt his meticulously prepared arguments crumble. How could he deny racial profiling when his own officer had just provided a textbook demonstration? This case, Judge Reed continued, is no longer theoretical. We have witnessed firsthand the systematic profiling that undermines public trust. Attorney Hayes's experience demonstrates these violations affect every level of society. Ethan rose, his voice carrying the moral authority of someone who had just lived the injustice he fought. The handcuff marks on his wrists were still visible. Your Honor, less than an hour ago, I was handcuffed on these courthouse steps for the crime of being a black man in a business suit. Officer Riley assumed I was trespassing because he couldn't imagine someone who looked like me belonged in this temple of justice. His words resonated, broadcast live to thousands. The image of a civil rights attorney in handcuffs outside a courthouse became a powerful symbol. This incident perfectly illustrates why the Morrison case matters. Ethan continued, transforming personal humiliation into legal argument. When police officers profile citizens, they don't just violate individual rights, they undermine justice itself. They declare some Americans less innocent. His credibility was unimpeachable. Jenkins sat stunned, his strategy shattered. No jury would believe profiling didn't exist. After seeing video evidence, Ethan continued his opening statement, connecting his experience to the broader pattern. Officer Riley's actions weren't aberrations, they were manifestations of systemic bias, requiring systemic solutions. Body cameras, bias training, civilian oversight, accountability. These aren't anti-police, they're pro-justice reforms. His recommendations, born of personal experience, were practical solutions. Judge Reed nodded. Furthermore, Ethan said, reaching into his briefcase, I'm prepared to testify as a witness. My experience today, witnessed by judges, attorneys and court staff, demonstrates racial profiling isn't limited to traffic stops. It happens at the courthouse steps, to officers of the court. Ethan's testimony would carry extraordinary weight. Jenkins knew challenging his credibility was impossible. 6 months later, Ethan received a letter from a community college, not a police station. Attorney Hayes, it read, I've enrolled in criminal justice classes, focusing on constitutional law and civil rights. You were right. This incident could define my career or transform it. I chose transformation. I hope someday to work alongside attorneys like you, fighting for the justice I once undermined. Ethan smiled, filing it under redemption. The courthouse now displayed a plaque. Justice is blind to color, creed, and class. All who enter here in pursuit of justice are welcome, protected, and respected. Below it, a photo showed Ethan, briefcase in hand, walking towards justice, with the dignity that carried him through handcuffs and vindication. The lesson was clear: witness injustice, speak up, demand accountability. Riley's prejudice became progress. Ethan's victimhood, advocacy. The courthouse steps, a symbol of justice's capacity for self-correction. The handcuffs, meant to humiliate, became symbols of liberation. Justice, Ethan reflected, wasn't always swift, but when pursued with patience, dignity, and unwavering truth, it was unstoppable, even when it began with handcuffs on courthouse steps.